Hey, welcome to my channel. I make videos about my experience as a late diagnosed autistic human being. I haven't washed my hair since the last video I made, so it's up in a ponytail because it's disgusting. I've got my mint tea in this cup that my partner got when he went to Disneyland Paris in November. It's very fitting, too tired to be angry. I don't know, it resonates with me. Guys, I feel like I'm slowly coming out of burnout. Isn't that crazy? I never thought I'd say that in one of my videos. And I had forgotten what it felt like to have close to normal energy levels. Have enough spoons for the day almost. Isn't that insane? Like having having at least one spoon left at the end of the day. Insane, right? I had forgotten what that was like. When you have lots of energy, you take it for granted, just like anything else in life. When you have a lot of something, you tend to take it for granted, and I definitely took energy for granted when I had what felt like infinite amounts of it. Now I'm very much aware of the fact that I don't have infinite amounts of it, and that it's very precious, and that is what enables me to do things in life is energy. And when I don't have it anymore, or not as much, I feel it. So I'm filming this after going in the garden and jogging for a bit out of nowhere. Like, I was in the garden and I thought, let's start running. I'm not a runner. I don't run. It was almost like I was like, I want to move my body, you know? Like, I've been trying to go for walks. Like, I've been going on a walk almost every day lately, and I've been trying to do yoga again almost every day as well, which that in itself is just crazy. And so I went into the garden after lunch, you know, and it's usually a time when my energy drops. It's like one of my lowest times during the day is like after lunch, early middle afternoon. I was like, yeah, let's go into the garden and then let's run. And so for about 10 minutes I did a few sprints. I ran around the garden because for the first time in our adult life, we have a garden that is larger than 3 meters wide and 3 meters long. So we actually have like a proper garden that's like pretty large, honestly. And we're able to do stuff in it. Shortly after we moved in, we bought a badminton court thingies, because it was, you know, in September, it was still sunny and stuff. And like, yeah, we can do stuff in this garden, and it's the first time we have a home with a garden we can do stuff in. So it's nice to be able to exercise outdoors without necessarily having to go to a public space, if that makes sense. We can still stay within the confines of home if you consider that the garden is part of your home. And so I did some sprints. I ran around the garden, and I took breaks in between each sprint to let my heartbeats like come back to a normal resting heart rate. I didn't feel completely drained afterwards. Not only did I not feel completely drained, I then grabbed my yoga mat and decided to do some yoga on the terrace because it's quite cloudy today, as you can probably tell from the lighting in this room, but it's not cold, honestly, like for a late January. I was able to do yoga on the terrace wearing just a t-shirt. And it was really nice. Now I'm feeling it because I just exercised. I'm feeling like the fatigue coming on, but like it makes sense considering what I just did. The fact that I was able to do it and not die or not feel like I was dying while doing it is just mind-blowing to me. So yeah, it's very strange, and I'm like starting to do things again. Like 1 or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember, my partner and I went, like we took a walk as usual, but instead of just staying around the house, we actually climbed all the way to the city center, which like it's like the city center is on a hill, if you will, and we live at the bottom of the hill. So whenever we want to go into the city center, it's a lot of climbing and going up, which is why I hadn't gone into the city center in a couple months, actually. And so I did that, and it was taxing, and we took the long way there. That was the least steep, but still, I managed to do it. And then we sat on a bench near the cathedral for like half an hour to recuperate, and then went home. And like it did not, even though it was a lot of physical exercise, it did not significantly impact my energy levels in the days that followed, which is an indication that it was something I could handle, my body could handle. And in 3 days, we're going to an event in the city, and like I never would have considered going. Like I've made a plan for it to be manageable. We're already planning to take an Uber to get there so that I don't spend all my energy walking there. And then I'm like already planning in my head that I don't have to stay very long. Like I can stay as little as half an hour and then go home. And of course, I'm gonna bring all my sensory aids, my loops, my headphones, fidgets, sunglasses, everything I need. So I'm thinking, I'm planning how I'm gonna make it comfortable and manageable. But I mean, I never would have even planned to do something like this even a few weeks ago. So that's crazy that I'm able to make plans again to do things. And I'm already thinking ahead about my birthday in April. I'd like to go on a little vacation somewhere in France. So this year, because I'm still recovering from burnout this year, I told myself I'm not going to go on any big trips, because last year we had a big trip planned to Asia that we ended up having to cancel. And so I don't want to aim too high because I'm still in recovery. So I thought, I'm not leaving Europe this year. Even if we do go on trips, it's not going to be more than 2 trips at most. And like we're going to stay within Europe. But for my birthday in April, because it's quite close, it's in 3 months, but it's quite close. I thought we're gonna go somewhere in France so that we can take the train. We don't have to take a plane, and it's like a small scale. Like and it's just for a few days. It's gonna be the perfect vacation while still recovering from burnout, because it's not too big. We can have like free cancellation, so we have that peace of mind of knowing that we can cancel if we end up not going, deciding not to go. Like it's very low key vacation. But again, the fact that I'm even planning a vacation for my birthday is crazy. And we'll probably do something in July for my partner's birthday. Maybe go to Greece, I don't know. But again, like something not too ambitious for my energy levels. And of course, like now that I have a better understanding of my needs, I can plan the vacation accordingly. And I know that I need this specific type of Airbnb that I'm able to recover. Because when I go on vacation, it's very draining for me. So I always end up having days where I don't want to leave the place that we're staying at. So it needs to be a place where we can cook our own food, and where we can relax and recover. Because when we don't have that, I find that it's harder for me to recover, and so I end up accumulating a lot of fatigue and stress, and that leads to meltdowns and stuff. So yeah, like I have a good idea of what my needs are for next time I go on vacation. But the fact that I'm making plans is just a very good sign to me that I'm slowly coming out of burnout. And it feels strange because I was starting to believe, and my burnout wasn't even that long if you consider that it's only been less than a year. Like some people have burnouts that last years, several years. So in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been that long, but I was already starting to believe that I was never gonna go back to my normal energy levels. So yeah, it feels really weird. It's been 3 weeks since my in-laws left, and I'm only just starting to regulate again, to be able to regulate my nervous system. I still have a lot of anxiety tics. I don't know if I mentioned that in my previous video, but like I mentioned that I was stimming a lot, but I also have a lot of anxiety tics. And I know that's when I'm dysregulated. So I still have them, less so than a week ago. And it's mostly like facial tics. I've talked about them a lot on my channel. And yeah, I'm just starting to feel better. I was really struggling emotionally these past 3 weeks. Had multiple meltdowns. That's just the word I use to describe them. I don't know. I have different types of meltdowns, or I don't know. It's just a whole mess. But basically, I have moments when I'm like emotionally overwhelmed. I start crying very intensely and just talk, word vomit about whatever is troubling me. And usually I don't know what's troubling me because I have alexithymia, and the meltdown, if that's what it is, actually helps me figure out why I feel bad and put words on how I'm feeling. So it typically starts as me feeling annoyed and like, I don't know why I feel that way. And then by the end, I'm like, so that's why I feel that way. Yeah, that makes sense. The reason why I'm hesitating to call them meltdowns, even though I'm pretty sure that's what they are, is because I feel so much better afterwards. And a lot of the time when I hear people talk about their meltdowns, they don't feel like they feel completely drained afterwards, and it takes them a long time to recover. But for me, these types of crying meltdowns help me externalize what I'm feeling and make sense of it and process my emotions, and then afterwards I always feel better, even just a little bit. So yeah, I had lots of moments like that, and especially yesterday. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? Yesterday, it's blurry. I feel like I had one of those meltdowns, and I feel like I finally was able to put my finger on what I had been struggling with emotionally. Sometimes I'm convinced that I'm dealing with lots of different things, lots of different emotions, lots of different things, and then I realize that it's actually all one thing, which makes more sense. I feel like the reason why I've been struggling so much emotionally these past 3 weeks was actually related to trauma. There was obviously like it's all linked, right? The nervous system dysregulation and everything. The main reason why I struggled so much during the holidays, other than the fact that I was still in burnout, so I had limited resources, which amplified everything, was that I just had a massive trauma response, which is what happens anytime I see my in-laws or other, toxic people. Which is what I'm starting to label them as now, because like they weren't always toxic, but these past holidays they were definitely the most toxic they've ever been, and so that massively triggered my trauma. The reason why it took me 3 weeks to begin to even start to regulate my nervous system is because my trauma has been triggered, and it stirred a lot of things. I often feel like I'm overwhelmed with a lot of anger and grief, which comes from trauma. I'm well aware of that. And I think it's just gonna take time to process these things. I think I'm doing everything right, everything I'm supposed to be doing to process these emotions, and it's just gonna take time because there's a lot of it. Feelings that often come back for me are feelings of loneliness and feeling like I've lost something, a feeling of grief and mourning, almost like mourning the loss of something. And especially the fact that I lost so many people in my life, as I explained before. The people who passed away, like my great aunt, and the people that I consciously decided to cut out of my life because they weren't healthy for me, like my parents and my ex-best friend, and now my in-laws. I haven't cut them out, but I'm putting like very big boundaries in place. It just means that I've lost a lot of people. By losing all these people, I lost especially my parents and my great aunt. It felt like I lost my home. I'm gonna try really hard not to cry in this video. But it felt like I lost that. I was grieving the loss of that warm feeling of belonging to a family and having a family home, if you will, to come back to whenever I want to feel comforted and safe. I didn't have that. And I kept thinking, why do I feel like I'm missing something? Even though I have my partner and our cats, we have our own home, our own little family that we've created that is built on safety and trust and stuff. I think I was wrong to associate them because they're two different things. But what it all comes down to is the fact that I'm not done processing the grief of losing the parents that I thought I had, the parents I deserved, and the parents I wanted, whom never existed actually, because a lot of back when they were still in my life and I still spent time with them, I was in denial and I was projecting a lot of stuff onto them, projecting stuff from my childhood back when I just got interrupted, so I'm going to get back into the flow of what I was saying. While I was still in touch with my parents, they were still in my life, I was projecting a lot onto them, a lot of stuff from my childhood, which stemmed from a time when I was too little to realize that there was something wrong going on in my family, because my brain was protecting me from realizing that, because it wasn't safe for me to see my parents as abusers because I depended on them, and I was just not emotionally intelligent enough yet to realize these things and mature enough. My parents, although they already were abusive towards me and each other, they weren't as abusive as when I got older, because I was very compliant as a little kid. And so basically that meant that as a little kid, I was not consciously unhappy. Unconsciously, there was a lot of stuff going on, but consciously, I felt happy because a lot of the time I was doing what I loved. I was focusing as much as possible on my special interests, and so I was a happy little kid for the most part. I was able to completely dissociate, I was gonna say, and pretend like the world didn't exist around me and just focus on my sort of special interests. So I have a lot of memories of emotional memories that are very good from childhood, feeling very passionate and feeling safe, and I was living in my own world basically, and projecting on my parents what I needed them to be, how I needed to see them. And as I got older, I still had that vision of my parents, and then I had the reality of what my parents were like that came into conflict with each other. And it was a very hard realization for me when I realized that they weren't this projection from childhood. They were actually not very nice people who made my life really difficult. And so for a few years, I was in denial about that. I was still projecting all that stuff from childhood and convincing myself that they were these people, but they weren't. So I would keep going back to them and getting hurt. And so basically, I reached a point where I realized that for my own sanity and well-being, I had to cut them out of my life, which is what I did, because I had to choose the lesser evil. You know, it's not easy going no contact with your parents, but sometimes it becomes a necessity. It's painful to not have them in my life, but it's even more painful to have them in my life, which is why I don't have them in my life anymore. It's a huge thing to process. It's very traumatizing, and so I'm still dealing with grieving the loss of those projections I had and those warm fuzzy feelings from childhood that I had to leave behind, that feeling of belonging to a family and so I'm not over that yet. I just have wounds that haven't healed yet. I have needs that weren't met by my caregivers, my parents. And so what I realized yesterday is that thing that I keep feeling like I'm missing something, it can't be solved by anyone else in my life. That void cannot be filled by anyone else in my life because it should have been filled by my parents, but my parents can't fill it either. It's not a solution to go back to them. That's what I did for years and it didn't work. So yesterday it clicked that what I have to do is fill that void for myself. And that it's gonna sound really cheesy, but I think there's a lot of truth in it to be your own parent, reparent yourself and care for that little kid inside who didn't get what they needed and are still hurting. I still haven't moved on. I recently posted on my channel pictures from a video game from my childhood that I'm able to play again thanks to my partner. And I was asking, why do you think a lot of us autistic people gravitate towards the same things we liked as children? And I definitely think there's an element linked to autism, but in my case, I think this trauma has something to do with it. And it's like I'm unconsciously trying to reconnect with that little child and heal that little child inside me by consuming the things I consumed as a child. So replaying the same games, rereading the same books, rewatching the same movies, because it's healing, And so, yesterday I had this revelation of I keep searching for the person who's gonna fill that void, but no one's gonna fill that void for me. I have to fill it myself. I have to be the parent that I didn't have for myself and heal that parent, that child in me who is crying and who is scared. And so when I had that realization, even though technically I already knew this, but maybe I had forgotten about it a bit, because I did I read a lot of self-help books and stuff like that for children of toxic parents. And I did exercises like that where you write a letter to your child self, or you look at a picture of you as a child and talk to you as a child as if you were a parent. And the other day I was feeling overwhelmed emotionally and I felt like I needed to be comforted. And instead of going to my partner, which is usually what I do, I comforted myself. I gave myself a hug and I talked to myself as if I was talking to a child. And that was really healing, and that helped me a lot. And so I think that's what I need to do more of, is heal my inner child and give it what I didn't receive from my parents, what they couldn't give me. Instead of constantly feeling this urge to go back to them for something they can't give me, I'm going to give it to myself. And my partner can't give it to me either, because it's not his role. He's not my parents, you know? And why all of this was revived these past few weeks, I think, is because of all the things I realized about my in-laws. The fact that I kept trying to make the relationship work for years, and I maybe didn't fully realize, or I lied to myself about their toxic traits and kept thinking that somehow it was my job to fix it, change things, when it wasn't. And so I decided to take my distance. I think that stirred up a lot of stuff, because I think unconsciously, by trying to fix the relationship with my in-laws, I was trying to fix the relationship with my parents, because I know I can't fix the relationship with my parents. I know that now, because it's been years and I've tried over and over again and failed every time. So I know I can't fix the relationship with my parents. And so instead of focusing on that, I put my focus on trying to fix the relationship with my in-laws as like a projection of, because sometimes it is safer or easier to project the struggle you have with someone onto something else. Like, for example, I've always been super scared of werewolves ever since I saw Harry Potter 3, The Prisoner of Azkaban, in the cinema as a... When did it come out? I was probably 6-7 years old. You know, the werewolf, like Professor Lupin? I was absolutely terrified. I was so terrified, in fact, that the manager of the cinema knew about my fear of werewolves and like gave me trigger warnings for other movies that I came to watch that had werewolves in them. And like it became like a known fact about me that I'm terrified of werewolves, especially the one from Harry Potter. Basically any werewolf that is more human-like than wolf-like. And that it's not just, the change doesn't only happen physically, it happens internally as well. Like Professor Lupin, when he turns into a werewolf, he's not Professor Lupin anymore. He becomes that beast that only wants to kill. I've thought about it a lot over the years, because I always thought like, this fear doesn't feel very rational. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about how it, in a certain way, it feels very similar to my dad, and why the symbol of the werewolf scares me so much is because he's basically like a nice, trustworthy human being suddenly turns into an uncontrollable, bloodthirsty beast that like he could be your best friend 1 minute and then want to kill you the next. And I think that as a kid, long before I was able to realize that my father was physically abusive and emotionally, verbally abusive, like abusive all around, I was still aware of it on an unconscious level. And so I projected the fear that I had for my dad onto the werewolf because it was safe. There weren't going to be consequences of being afraid of a mythical creature from a movie, you know? I think the reason I was so afraid of werewolves was because my dad was a werewolf to me as that 6-year-old that I was, because my dad could be so sweet, so caring, so sensitive, and then in the blink of an eye, I would do something wrong in his eyes and he would turn into this monster, and like his face would change, the way he looked at me would change, and I didn't feel safe, and he would hurt me physically, and sometimes chase me, and I would hide, but he would always find me. And so it very, very much felt like when, Harry and Hermione are running away from Professor Lupin, who turned into a monster, and like they are very much aware that he could kill them in that moment, even though 10 minutes ago he was their lovely professor, teacher, That makes a lot of sense to me, that I felt like my father was the werewolf. That's why I was always terrified of werewolves, because it's like this symbol of like someone, it's almost like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as like someone that you can trust, someone who's supposed to protect you, and then all of a second they want to kill you. It's very scary, especially when that's your own caregiver. I don't think my father would have killed me, but in my 6-year-old mind, when he was abusing me, hurting me, it very much felt like I was in danger, But it wasn't safe for me to see my father as anything other than a loving parent, because my survival depended on him. And so it wasn't until I moved to London when I was 20 years old that it all came back flooding to me. I don't like to say it all came back to me because it implied that I forgot. I never had like amnesia or anything like that, but somehow like I had those memories, but I hadn't made sense of them yet. It's like my brain was protecting me from seeing the truth in them. And it wasn't until I moved out, like literally months after I moved out of my parents' house when I was 21, and I was living with my partner, that I felt safe enough to start processing these memories and realizing that my father and my mother were my abusers, even though they should have been the ones protecting me, caring for me, making me feel safe. They were my abusers, and I'm 27, almost 28 now, and I'm still processing that, still struggling with it. It's still a wound I'm trying to heal. I have to now be the parent that I didn't have and make my inner child feel safe and loved and cared for, so that I won't have this void in me and feel like I'm missing something, and I have to go to other people to fill that void for me. I have to fill it. So since I had that realization yesterday, and I was like, oh yeah, that's why I've been feeling like crap these past 3 weeks. Other than like, obviously like the nervous system dysregulation is one thing, but emotionally I had been feeling like crap. I'm like, oh, that's why I've been feeling really depressed, because like what happened with my in-laws really like awakened all these emotions of like basically the hurts that I have and the things that I need to heal. And so when I realized that, I felt a lot better. I've been feeling a lot better emotionally since yesterday, because it clicked. And it also clicked for my partner, who in many ways is going through a similar process to me. And so we were kind of able to help each other, and it got us much closer. Also, if we feel like we reconnected yesterday, because when we're not doing well emotionally, we tend to distance. I mean, at least I tend to isolate myself and like distance myself from my partner to protect myself, I guess. And I just don't feel as connected to him. And then, yeah, when we have these moments of realization, usually it pulls us closer, it reconnects us, and that's what happened yesterday. So it's been really healing. And suddenly I didn't feel depressed anymore, because I understood why I was suffering, So yeah, I thought I'd share that. Something else that has made me feel pretty sad lately is, and it's probably tied to what I just talked about in some ways, is the fact that, and I've mentioned that before, but I can't rely on my special interests as much as I used to be able to. That's very painful for me. Like as a child and a teenager, I had such intense special interests that gave me absolutely gave me life, and I would dedicate every moment of my time to them when I didn't have to focus on school or anything like that. And they were everything to me, and they kept me alive through a lot of hardships. And ever since I became an adult, I lost that. I played the piano for over 15 years, and I felt so alive when I played the piano, and it helped me process my emotions, and I was so passionate. And these past few years I've gone from not playing much to completely to stopping it completely. Actually, as a matter of fact, when we moved 5 months ago, I considered selling my keyboard, and then I ended up keeping it. But since we moved into the new house, I haven't taken it out of its case and propped it up. I haven't played in months, if not more than a year. Same thing with writing. It used to be one of my main special interests, was writing fantasy stories, and I haven't been able to write these past few years. I was able to go back to writing for my master's degree in creative writing because I was in that academic context, but outside of my master's, not much. Basically, the special interests that I still have are not as intense as they used to be, and they don't provide me with as much meaning and life as they used to. And I think it's a combination of things. I think it's just all the trauma that I've been processing is taking up so much space mentally, and then the autistic fatigue burnout on top of just trying to keep up with adult life is making it so that I'm not able to focus as much as I used to. The reason why my special interests were so life-giving when I was younger was because I was able to really hyper-focus on them. And I had this thing of forgetting everything around me and forgetting to eat and pee and stuff. Now I don't have that ability anymore. That was the reason why I was able to make it through school and I didn't have meltdowns every single day when I came from home, was because I was able to put all of that aside, my school stuff aside, and just plunge into my special interests and forget about everything else. And I'm not able to do that anymore. And that's probably because of burnout and trauma and stuff. It's I don't have the mental ability to do that anymore, which means I'm not able to engage deeply with my special interest anymore. By the way, if you can hear in the background, it's raining. If you're into ASMR, enjoy. And so the special interests that I still have, they're not making me feel alive like I used to. And my partner has the exact same problem. I wish I heard more people talk about it online. The struggle of when you become an adult, an autistic adult, not having the time or the spoons or the mental ability to dedicate, to engage deeply with your special interests. My most intense special interests were back when I was into Arabian horses as a teenager, and I thought that was going to be my life. When I was in high school, my father, who also has a lifelong special interest in horses, started a horse farm with me. I invested money into it. I thought that was what I was going to do. I spent my winter holidays in a farm. Despite all of my autistic challenges, I went there. I helped deliver foals. It was very taxing, but I didn't care. It was I was so passionate, and I knew everything about the industry. I was able to talk to 40, 50-year-old professionals in the industry, and they thought I was their age because I knew so much stuff, and I was only 16. And I created a whole YouTube channel and a whole website for that. And every waking moment I had, I was spending time learning about learning about Arabian horses, the industry, what was trendy, the latest trendy stallion or whatever, and like all the technical aspects of the shows, the beauty shows, and like I even attended beauty shows. And when I wasn't doing that, I was playing a horse management game. It was all consuming, and we ended up having a mare who gave birth to a foal. They still live with my dad, with my parents. Unfortunately, we couldn't continue because of financial reasons. But like, that was everything. Same thing with when I had special interests in certain filmmakers or actors, kind of like how Dana describes it, except she still has that, and I've lost most of it. She'll hyperfixate on one specific filmmaker or actor and watch everything that they made, know everything about them. I was very much like that. Like as a teenager, I discovered The League of Gentlemen, and then I was obsessed with the trio, you know, Mark Gatiss, Steve Mamet, and Reese Shearsmith. And so then I watched everything else that they made. I watched Sherlock, which is how I discovered Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman, and then I had a special interest in them, and then I watched everything they made. And I also watched Psychoville with Steve Pemberton and Reese Shearsmith, and that led me on to watching Inside Number 9 and everything. And I also had a special interest in the English language, so I loved the fact that they were English shows, and I could practice my English, and so I purchased all the DVDs, and I watched them. I watched them on repeat, and I mentioned in one of my videos how I spent an entire week with my grandma watching the director's commentary of The League of Gentlemen, which was over 10 hours long. Like I was so passionate about my special interests. They were everything to me, and that was all I could talk about. And I still have that to some extent with autism, for example, which has been my special interest for the past year, but it's not to the extent that it used to be. Yes, that's all I can think and talk about for the most part, and every single day I spend hours watching videos about autism and stuff, but I guess I'm talking about not so much the amount of energy I put into it or time I put into it, but more like how it makes me feel. It doesn't make me feel alive as much as it used to. And I know that like burnout can make you feel kind of dull your emotions. So there's probably some of that. And also, like I said, trauma, like processing trauma takes a big toll mentally. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that was also a reason why I'm not able to engage as deeply with my special interests as I used to. But like all of that combined makes it so that I feel like I'm constantly chasing after, like I'm a desperately nostalgic person, because I'm constantly trying to re-experience what I experienced as a child and a teenager, when I was able to feel that deep passion, feel so alive thanks to my special interests. And I feel like I can get close to it, but never as intensely. Like I'm not able to hyper focus like I used to be able to, and just I'm not getting as much joy from it as I used to be able to. That's depressing. Do any of you have struggles with your special interests? Like, do any of you feel like when they, like over time or when they became an adult, their ability to engage with their special interests disappeared, or their love for their special interests disappeared and like died away? Because I feel like I'm not, like, I hear people say like, try to, you know, reconnect with your past special interests and stuff. I know I'm not passionate about these things anymore. I can't, like, I would force myself to enjoy these things again, but I wouldn't enjoy them as much as I used to. So maybe I need to find new special interests, but I don't know, like I said, because of burnout, I don't feel like my brain is able to handle hyperfocus and like deeply engaging with special interests. So yeah, I I don't really know what to do about it. And for an autistic person, not having special interests anymore is like one of the most depressing things in life, because that's what sustains us, that's what keeps us alive, that's what keeps us going, that's what helps us deal with life. And I am able to deal with life thanks to comfort things, you know, my comfort movies and stuff. But I don't have that driving, that passion that drives me forward like I used to have. Like my special interest in autism makes it so that I engage with it every single day, but I don't feel like it's giving me life, you know? It's not giving me that burning passion, you know? So yeah, that's also something I've been struggling with, but I'm trying to stay positive, believe that once I have healed more of my trauma that I talked about earlier and come out of burnout, hopefully I'll be able to have intense special interests again. Because honestly, I feel like that's what I need to be happy right now. And my partner feels the same way. We feel like ever since we became adults, for him it started even earlier, like in as a teenager. It feels like we've just been surviving, and we haven't been happy. We haven't been truly happy. We haven't felt truly alive, you know? And maybe that's a normal autistic experience, I don't know. But I feel like I hear a lot of autistic adults talk about their special interests. And I have to say, a lot of the time I feel kind of jealous because I wish I still had that. Let me know what you think in the comments. I would really like to hear from other people with similar experiences. And like, I never had a special interest in a craft or something like that. For me, it was always a type of media or an animal species. I never had like a lot of autistic people have a special interest in a craft, and so engaging with their special interest for them would be like making something with their hands, like crocheting something, and watching videos about crochet and learning new crocheting techniques. That's a very like hands-on special interest, you know? I don't have stuff like that. I guess the closest thing to that was crafting a story, but it's not like a physical thing, you know? So it's not like, you know, I often hear like, engage with your special interest again, and I'm like, yeah, well, if it's something like crocheting or knitting, it's easy, like you take it out of the drawer and start doing it. But for me, it's not like that. Like, I can't just magically pick a movie or an animal and decide to have a special interest in it. Like, the special interest chooses you. You don't choose the special interest, you know? That's where I'm at. I don't really know how to conclude or end this video for some reason. So I'm just gonna end it now. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting. Did I say that already? I don't know. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.